Hi, I'm Christian Stevenson with the Mississippi State University Extension Service in Hancock County. And today I am talking to you about the benefits of gardening to us as members of the community, the benefits to our communities as a whole. And I'm also going to have some comments about how to start a community garden. I have been very fortunate to be able to be involved with a number of community gardens here in Hancock County, Mississippi. Get to interact with them really frequently. I have had the opportunity to be involved in community gardens that are located elsewhere, giving them some advice and just coming out and participating. It's something that I really believe in, and I hope that the people who are listening will get involved in, because it really does have a lot of benefits to us personally, but it also is one of those things that we can do that can really impact our communities in a positive way. And so a lot of the time when I'm talking to you about the how of gardening. I talk to you about how to grow plants. And so today what I'd like to spend most of my time on is really talking about why. And so, community gardening in the United States has a long history. It was actually started in the 1890s. And what was going on, and this may seem like a familiar story, is that the population was becoming more and more urban and getting disconnected from their food production. People didn't really know and certainly didn't experience where their food came from. And so there were a lot of concerns about food security, and all of this led to the establishment of gardening associations right at the end of the 1800s. And you can see some really early photographs of these early community gardens. There is the Captain Gardener and others in the midst of potato patches in Detroit, pictures of workers from the turn of the 20th century there. But this community gardening movement really butted up against the expansion of that urban population. There was a lot of high value land, and it was really difficult to have that community garden effort kind of fighting against the expansion of urban development. Now, as the United States entered into the First World War, there was a huge increase in support for community gardening programs. There was a model that really came out of the United Kingdom, of the Land Army, and so we had our home gardens and our community gardens were really seen as a tool to increase production and really allow us to provide more resources to the war effort. And you can see, of course, you can go back in the records and you can find these old posters that are, sort of the advertisements for these early community gardens and the importance of personal gardens. There was a U.S. National War Garden Commission to support home and community gardens. It really stayed strong through the end of the end of World War I and that period of time. Now, as we got into the 1920s, as we got into the 1930s, they started to have kind of a social stigma that was attached to gardening, to having these gardens. They were not seen as great places, and that wound up leading to a reduction in funding and overall a reduction of the number of these gardens as we got into the 1930s. And then, of course, World War II came around, and the community garden movement and the victory garden movement really took off like never before. 1943, 1947, 3.5 million women joined the Women's Land Army. That is my favorite poster there. that Call to Farms poster. I think that is a great advertisement. They were part of the U.S. Crop Corps, working on farms. In addition to that, there was the youth that were aged 12 to 18, joined the Victory Farm Volunteers, and they would actually go out and go into rural communities and work on farms. But Victory Gardens, those, a lot of that time, those were just people's gardens in their on their own property. And in 1943, there were 18 million Victory Gardens in the United States. In 1944, they actually equaled commercial production in the amount of vegetables produced. And I was sent this picture by one of the Hancock County Master Gardeners, Ms. Sullivan. This is an actual Victory Garden, a community garden that was started in 1943 that is still going strong. And so it's encouraging to see that these gardens are still with us, are still being loved and cared for. So it was really appreciative of that picture. And I think it's really neat that we have these gardens that have been around since the development of that Victory Garden movement, especially now as we are seeing that word Victory Garden come up again in response to our current situation. Now, things move in waves, and interest in gardening did decline a little bit in the 50s and 60s. Different fuel costs and conditions in urban communities in the 70s, and really even through the 80s, the really kind of support of community gardens was through nonprofits like the American Community Gardening Association. But more recently, there has been a move back to the support of these community gardens because of all of the great benefits that they have. So the USDA has the People's Garden Program, just links you to educational resources. There's actually grant information about that as well. And there's a lot more growing support for community gardens now. And we have, this data is a little bit old, but at the time I was looking at this a couple of years ago, there were 18,000 community gardens around the United States and Canada. So all of that is just kind of give you an introduction to community garden or community gardening, things that I think are really important. But what I'd like to do for a little while is talk to you about the benefits of gardening to you, and then the benefits of the gardening to your community. Starting with talking about gardening and health, one of the things that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to when we talk about our health, a lot of times we think about our health and we think, oh, I need to go exercise more, and I need to lift weights or run or bike or do all these other things. And that may well be the case. We also need to take care of our mental health. And particularly when big events are going on, often stress is kind of an unrecognized element of what's going on. And so horticulture therapy is just the use of green spaces and gardening as a way to help people mentally, and of course it helps people physically as well. And so exposure to green spaces really does help us reduce stress, increase our sense of wellness and our sense of belonging in our communities. The figure that I always like for that is that increasing our green space by 10% decreases our physical complaints the same as reducing our age by 5 years. And I wouldn't mind being 38 again. I imagine there's a few of you out there that wouldn't mind feeling a little bit younger as well. So natural, those natural areas do have a lot of mental health benefits. We all get a little bit of mental fatigue. We get tired as part of our daily lives. We have to make a bunch of decisions, and we just need to rest our minds a little bit. So being in those natural places helps that, helps our outlook. When I am, not feeling my best, going outside, just walking around and seeing all the trees and flowers makes me feel a lot better. Just helps with that recovery from stress. Also helps us recover from injury. So if we're not feeling well or if we've had an illness, getting out in green spaces can be really beneficial. When we come back, we're better able to concentrate, and we're going to be more productive after taking this time to go out and kind of reset our mental batteries. So, get out there and look at plants that's been shown to make you feel less afraid, less angry, drop down that blood pressure a bit, take the tension out of your lower back and out of your shoulders, just make you feel a lot better. So this is a success story for horticulture therapy. Just kind of gives an example of how beneficial it can be. And it's using a Brentwood, California veterans garden that had a sample size of 35 patients. And these patients have generally not been able to hold down jobs since the Vietnam War. But participation in this horticulture therapy program reduced the duration of inpatient stays. Gardeners actually made progress at faster rates and were better able to get out into the world. And it also offered them employment benefits. So they developed a skill in gardening, skill in horticulture, were able to get jobs in that, or were interested in going to school for horticulture-related topics. I did mention we do need to get out there and do some exercise. Gardening can be considered a moderate to heavy intensity physical activity. Getting out there and pulling weeds or planting things or all of those activities can be really good physical exercise. We're going to see a benefit to our cholesterol levels, benefit to our blood pressure, and participating in gardening above baseline gives you a 48.4% increase in your physical activity. That's going to help you reduce body fat, wind up with weight loss, give you more flexibility, and make you feel like you have a little bit more energy. So one of the great things about gardening is I have encountered a lot of forms of exercise that while they may be really good for me, they're not necessarily things that I'm going to want to spend a lot of time doing. Running on a treadmill or other activities like that, it's really hard to stick with. But we figured out that people tend to stick with gardening an awful lot more. So people who start walking to get their exercise, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, they'll tend to do that for about 160 minutes per week. Not much different from biking, about the same. But people who garden tend to garden more and spend more time exercising than people who don't. So that's really going to help us stay in shape a little bit better and keep us good and healthy. It's also going to improve our diets because people who garden tend to eat more fruits and vegetables because we're growing them. About twice as many when we look at households that actually get all of their fruits and vegetables for a day. About twice as many will get all of those servings of fruits and vegetables if they're gardeners. I was really excited recently because we were pulling the first squash out of my garden for this year. And there's really nothing like taking those vegetables, right from your backyard and putting them into your kitchen and, into a pot. And onto a plate for your family. It's not only does it taste great, it's just a really great experience. So, there are some communities here in the United States that don't have access to healthy food, or at least don't have as much access as we would like them to have. And the presence of gardens, backyard gardens and community gardens together really provides, fresh, traditional produce, things people are going to want to eat, that are going to be nutritionally rich. And, I think when I first moved into the Hancock County area, Hancock County was, or areas of it were considered to be a food desert because we didn't have a grocery store within the range that would be considered appropriate. So things have improved. We've seen the several grocery stores come in, but if we look at other areas, a study of all food stores in 3 low-income zip codes in Detroit, only 19% carried a healthy food basket or carried all the healthy food they should. So people who participate in gardening are going to eat healthier, their children are going to eat healthier, and just have better nutrient-rich diets than people who don't garden. And one of the things I'm really fond of as participating in community gardens, something that I see people do from their own gardens all of the time, is have a lot of impact on their communities. And so this data is for the People's Garden Program. This is back almost 6 years ago now. Back then, there were just over 2,000 gardens, 1,300 different organizations, but they were donating almost 4 million pounds of produce. So that number has only gone up. It's something we've seen increase. That doesn't measure all of the home gardens and everything else where people are sharing the benefits of that garden with their community. Gardeners can also save money on their produce. One project estimated that a community gardener could save anywhere between $75 to $380 in food costs every season. A lot of that's going to be dependent on where you live and what you're buying and all sorts of other stuff like that. We're also saving a lot by shortening that commodity chain. We're not having to get all of the food transplanted 3,000 miles. It really is just right there in your backyard. So back in, this is now 20 years ago, 15 New York gardens had an organization called Just Food. And that was 11,000 pounds of fresh vegetables and fruit in that year, 50% being donated to soup kitchens and food pantries there in New York. And right now, in response to our current situation, there are several organizations out there, community gardens and garden organizations, that are doing just this again. And that is just a fantastic benefit to their community. Where we talk about economics, we start talking about, the individual's economics, but we also talk about the economics of the environment. Community gardens provide a place to get away from the noise and the hustle and the bustle of a urban environment. Oftentimes that benefits the community around them. That creates a walking place, a place where people are spending time, that small businesses can move into. Potentially, community gardens they may provide employment or education, training if you're interested in going off and becoming a small-scale vegetable producer or something like that. You can kind of get your start in a community garden. And, where we have vacant lots, where you might have litter or you might have criminal activity, putting in a community garden managed by the gardeners is going to wind up with a cleaner space, a more active local community, generally at essentially no cost to the community. So developing garden space is actually less expensive than maintaining a park. But gardens don't require a lot of land. 80% of that cost is going to be in labor, which is principally volunteer driven. And the average community garden actually adds around $9,000 a year to a city's tax revenue. You can see some great examples there, admittedly for more urban environments, but they have put community gardens in some fascinating places, empty lots, but also, tops of buildings, all sorts of things can be great sites for community gardens. Community gardens do potentially raise property values. Value properties right around the area can go up, a difference in $25 or so per square foot is pretty significant. And good landscaping in an area can really have a significant impact on home values for people as well. Of course, we don't want to think about crime as an issue in our communities, but it is something that does happen. One thing that has been shown is the more green space that's there, the less crime you have. So community gardening is actually recognized by a number of different police departments as an effective community crime prevention strategy. So getting out there and not only having the garden, but having the sense of community that comes along with it is really of benefit, because not only are you producing something, are you increasing the beauty of the environment, but you're also bringing a community together, and that's a big part of that benefit. Of course, again, want to mention reduction in stress. Access to greenery is really going to help that. Improving the appearance of some of these vacant lots or areas is going to be really important to people. And most people do feel that these gardens actually enhance the beauty of the community. And I also do like to tie that to environmental impact. We talk about where our food comes from. There was a big conversation about that for a number of years, and it does still come up. Average food here in the United States travels 1,300 miles from the farm to your fork. Changes hands several different times, and it costs a lot of energy and costs a lot of money to transport all of that food all of that distance. So locally grown food is going to reduce transit time, reduce waste, and it's going to keep that money right there in your community. So support of your local producers and support of your local farmers. So having your own garden to get that really healthy food, it's going to reduce costs for you, and it's going to have a lot of benefits to your community and to the environment. Of course, one thing that we can have, when we talk about community gardens, I always think about vegetables, but community fruit production is another really great way of doing this. This is something that we have to some extent in Hancock County and are currently looking to extend it. Fruit trees are going to last a long time. They provide long-term benefits. They provide shade. They provide attractiveness. And they also provide food. So we're getting a lot of work out of that one plant. The fruit that we're getting out of them is really high in nutritional value. And it also tends to be pretty high in terms of value as a commodity. So, if you're looking at blueberries that came all the way from Peru, that are $8 a container, growing some blueberry bushes in a community park or where people can access them that is potentially a significant benefit to them. People may not be able to go out there and purchase some of this fruit because of the high cost of it. There are some things that kind of make growing fruit orchards a little bit more difficult. It does cost a little bit more money. To get those trees initially. You might be looking at $30 or $40 for the individual trees. Working to find donations for plant material for the plants you're actually putting in can be a really important element of that. I've been very fortunate here in Hancock County that either the Urban Forestry Council or other organizations like the local community service organizations like Rotary are really interested in programs like this and have been willing to donate either funds or the plants themselves to get a community fruit orchards operating here in Hancock County. And I'm certain that you could find similar resources in other communities as well. I'm also certain that my fellow extension agents would be thrilled to work with you to help you find those resources. Planting the trees can be labor intensive. I don't find it to be any worse really than getting out there and planting the vegetables and weeding them and all that sort of stuff. But you may have a big work day when you're getting those trees in and maintaining them. One of the things you do have to think about is you are going to have some time before you see production out of them. So you may have to, plant that tree and wait 3 years to really get the benefit of it. But it's if you're willing to be patient with it, it's something that has the potential to be a benefit to the community really long term. So I also want to make some comments about starting a community garden. And after I make these general comments, I'm going to use Hancock County as an example of how we've approached these different problems or questions. And to be honest with you, it also gives me a little bit of an opportunity to brag about my community and the people that I get to work with. So the first thing that you want to do is just connect with other people who are interested in community gardening. And that's a great idea, to start with your garden clubs, master gardener associations, local community organizations like Rotary. Advertise by flyers. It's a little retro these days to put up flyers, but social media is a wonderful way to connect with a lot of people on that topic and get a lot of people organized and ready to go on something. So I definitely encourage you to reach out to people in those organizations, but also reach out on social media, connect with other people in your community who are interested in founding that community garden. The next thing you're going to need is a place to start with. So you need a good garden site, an area that's going to let you put in that garden. Local nonprofits may have access to land that they are not using for anything that they would love to see community gardens on. Often cities or county governments are willing to allow the construction of community gardens. And another really great opportunity is churches. Often they're really interested in participating, so that's a great opportunity there. You need to identify the tools and the equipment that you're going to need. Think about how you're going to build your garden. Are you going to need bricks to build the beds? Are you going to be doing things in the ground? Do you need a tiller, shovels, trowels, plants themselves? Think about all those tools you're going to need, which is really another great opportunity to reach out to your county extension agent to get some input on how they think the best way would be to go forward. Talk about what your goals are and the tools that you're going to need in order to get there. Talk about some of the local businesses, particularly local businesses that might be interested in donating some of those materials. A lot of times you'll find those local businesses are very happy to help you out. You do want to start with a plan, have an idea of what you're intending to do, and it is important to establish some guidelines. How are beds going to be assigned to people? Is there going to be a fee for using a bed? What's that going to be? What's that fee going to be? What's that fee going to be used for? How will future decisions be made? What are you going to do about pesticide use? Because I know some gardens that have some pretty strict rules and some that don't. What are you going to do with the produce? Does everybody manage their own bed, take what they grow, or is the produce donated somewhere? Are definitely things you want to have kind of sorted out as you get started to prevent problems later. And then once you have done all of that, then it's time to actually get out there and build that garden. So now I get to talk about the Bay St. Louis Community Garden. That is the fence right next to our entrance. And this garden is constructed on a city yard. Used to be used to store trucks and a variety of other things. In fact, the city does still share the property to store gravel and other materials like that. But they have allowed us the use of this space in order to have this community garden And I've been very fortunate to work with not only the city work crews, but also the mayors and city councilmen who've been really interested in the success of this garden. So this would be the very early establishment of the community garden. There are some of our earliest volunteers. And we actually started with an Edible Forest of Mississippi grant, where we were provided a large number of trees in order to actually start off as an orchard. So we planted those there in that city yard. You can see one of the city council, the city councilwoman at the time, one of the mayors, and some master gardeners, some other people who were in there, all getting started with that urban forest. So from that, we have this inauspicious beginning. So this is where we started with the construction of raised beds. You can see, it doesn't look like very much at the start, but we started with 8 of these raised beds. The brick was donated. Most of the soil was donated. The irrigation system was donated. And the chalkboard that you see on the fence was donated. And we started with these 8 beds just to get going as fast as we possibly could. And then we started partnering with other organizations in the community. Of course, the Master Gardener Association was really active in the development of the community garden. And things just start looking a little bit better in this picture, where we have more people engaged, more people participating in what's going on. We have some partnerships with the local chapter of the NAACP that remain active in the community garden. And you can really see things start to grow at that point. And getting engagement in the community is really important. That is a Girl Scout group that came in and wanted to put in flower beds and did a fantastic job. And down here on the coast, we have a really active art community. And so having them come out and paint a mural on the building out there really got more people engaged in the garden. We also had support from local businesses. So we had a Lowe's Heroes grant. So all the people that you see in these pictures are actually from the local Lowe's. They donated a large amount of materials. And not only that, they came out and actually helped us build everything and put in those new beds. So at this point, we went from a total of 8 beds to a total of 20 through the participation of that local business. We also worked with have the benefit of working with other Master Gardener groups in other areas. These are salad tables that are produced by the Pine Belt Master Gardener group. That would be Forest and Lamar County. And we have 13 of these at present there at the community garden that are still being used this day to allow access, growing a little bit extra, as well as allowing access for people who might have a little bit of a mobility issue. Really works very well. One of the important things for me at the community garden is that it allows me to use that garden as a resource for teaching. So the person with the with a unhealthy tomato plant brought it to me to see if I could help them identify what that problem was. And we can talk about other topics like integrating native bee houses and things like that. We also can bring in other people in the community. So the elders from one of our local senior citizens homes were able to visit and get some time out in green spaces. I really enjoy, and there were several of them that were very keen to give me some advice about how I could improve the garden. Also have donations of all sorts of birdhouses. People got engaged with that. Keeping young people in the garden is really important. It really keeps it engaged and helps us pass on that gardening to future generations. So here's here's some more modern pictures. You can see where we started to where we've been able to go in just a couple of years. So we've added in some ornamental space to really get that, have people have the opportunity to get out there and just enjoy the greenery. We've expanded up to 22 raised beds now, in addition to those salad tables. So if you stick with community gardening and you have that active group, you have the support of your community, you really can build that community garden up and do a lot of good for your community. One of the things, again, that I'm very keen on with our community garden is the result of our efforts. And at the Bay St. Louis Community Garden, the majority of the produce is donated either to the local senior center or to the food pantries or soup kitchens that are present there in the community. On average, that's been about 400 pounds of produce a season, which is just a little over 1,000 pounds a year that we get to donate to those community groups. And our standard rule is that 50% of what is produced is allowed to be taken home by the gardeners, and 50% is for the community. But we're blessed with dedicated workers in our community, and we find that far more than 50% is what gets donated. Another community garden we have in our area kind of has a different model, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. They just, different gardens serve different functions in the community. The Bay St. Louis Community Garden is all about growing produce and getting that produce out there. Ruth's Roots was started as a garden by the now former youth court judge in Hancock County. And it was really started as a way to integrate some time and some work with some of our youth drug court offenders to give them a community activity. It's grown since then. Ms. Listino is still involved with that, as well as a number of other individuals. Rachel Ramsey really engaged in that, and they absolutely do grow plants in that garden. But it's also really, they've got chickens and rabbits and bees and all sorts of other stuff going on. They've got those salad tables again with the help of the Pine Belt Master Gardeners. But they really created an area right in the downtown of Bay St. Louis with a lot of flowers and a lot of art going on. Where you see the fence in that top picture, they've now got a wooden fence in there that's got a mural on it. There's all sorts of art pieces and other things to really just be a little urban oasis right there in the middle of the town. They got chickens and rabbits for people to come in and enjoy. They've got beehives, and there's a local beekeeper who's not only helping them out with managing their bees, but using that as an opportunity to teach. And again, something that's really important for me with these community gardens and opportunities in gardening is that it really is a chance to share that love of gardening with other people in the community, particularly with young people, because we're going to wind up, they're going to be the next generation of gardeners. So there are some wonderful programs in 4-H, the 4-H horticulture program, really great opportunity. There's the Junior Master Gardener program. So if you do have young people in your life, I encourage you to get them involved in that, get them in 4-H so they can get involved in these gardening programs and get them involved in community gardening. It's going to foster that love of gardening throughout their entire life. So gardening really is a great way to have experiential learning. It's really great for science education, which is a topic that I'm really passionate about. So having science, having school gardens in association with a science class is really going to help with their understanding of those topics. You can see different community gardens going on here, some putting in trees at local schools. That was in cooperation with Woodmen of the World. And, again, Junior Master Gardener Program, talk to your local county agent about that. I bet you that they will be absolutely thrilled to participate in that with you. This is actually from Elise Dino. Just some benefits that she saw as a result of those community garden projects. Really about not punishing the kids, helping them change for the better. Opens up kids to a world of positive activities they can commit to and be involved in. Learn a lot about a different range of things like marketing, building, sale of goods, economics, taking care of animals, creating art, all sorts of really important skills that go along with that. And again, there's I'm just using this opportunity again. Some of our youth that are involved in community gardening. The nice lady there in the picture is a volunteer that really helps with our youth education programs. So I appreciate all the work that she does. And again, you can have flowers in your community garden. You can use it as a source for art projects. You can make sure that you get those young people in there learning all about gardening, having fun while they're doing it. And that goes all the way from the garden to learning nutrition programs as well. Really tie in with making sure they grow up good and healthy and have a good time while they're doing it. So, of course, the most important step in getting a garden going and getting a community gardening going is to go out there and do it. And if there's any help that I can provide you in order to do that, I would be absolutely thrilled to do that.